Seconds before Jimin left, Jungkook whispered, "Don't go." What happened next shattered ARMY's hearts. Loudly crying face, broken heart, fire, two hearts. The hallway was trembling from the storm outside when the words tore out of Jungkook's throat, raw, desperate, unfiltered. "Don't go," he whispered, his fingers barely grazing Jimin's wrist just as the older man turned away. The single touch was electric, almost frightened, like Jungkook was afraid Jimin might vanish if he breathed too hard. Jimin froze. His breath hitched, sharp enough to cut in the air between them. The wind howled through the cracked backstage door, rattling the metal frames, but nothing was louder than the silence stretching between the two men who had survived stages, scandals, sleepless years, yet somehow couldn't survive this one truth they'd kept buried. Jimin didn't turn around. Only the slightest tremor in his shoulders betrayed the chaos inside him. "You shouldn't say things like that, Jungkook," he said, voice low, strained, like every word tasted like regret. "Not when you don't mean them." The accusation hit Jungkook harder than any spotlight glare. His pulse slammed against his ribs. He hadn't planned this confrontation, hadn't even planned to breathe those words aloud. It just happened, rising from that dark, choking fear he'd been carrying for months. Fear that Jimin was slipping away. Fear that he'd let it happen outside. Thunder bellowed. The lights flickered. Jungkook stepped closer, his breath uneven as he caught the faint scent of Jimin's cologne, warm, familiar, maddening. He wanted to say everything, about the nights he couldn't sleep, the rehearsals where he searched for Jimin's gaze, the unspoken questions gnawing at him. But all he managed was a shaky exhale. "You think I don't mean it?" Jungkook asked quietly. Only now did Jimin turn. His eyes were bright, stormy, reflecting every emotion he refused to voice. His jaw clenched, his brows pulled together, the look of someone bracing for impact. "You only say things when you're scared," he said. "Not when you're sure." The words dug under Jungkook's skin, stirring memories he tried not to revisit, those low nights after the tour ended, when he found Jimin drifting further away, choosing solitude over company, silence over comfort. He'd told himself it was stress, exhaustion. But deep down, he knew it was something else. Something heavier, and now, they were standing in the heart of that weight. Thunder cracked again. The hallway lights flickered once more before stabilizing, casting both of them in a cold, silver glow. "Hyung," Jungkook said, the word trembling. "I'm scared because it matters." Jimin's breath stilled. His hand tightened around the strap of his bag, knuckles whitening. "It matters too much," he whispered. "That's the problem." Jungkook swallowed hard. He could see it now, Jimin's exhaustion, not physical but emotional. Something had been eating at him for weeks. Something Jungkook had been too afraid to force out into the open. "Tell me what happened," Jungkook breathed. "Tell me why you're walking away." Jimin looked down. The hall echoed with the hum of distant equipment, the faint thundering rain. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, only a quiet, pained laugh that made Jungkook's chest tighten. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." Jimin's eyes lifted, glossy with frustration. "If I tell you, you'll look at me differently." Jungkook shook his head. "I won't." "Yes," Jimin hissed, the emotion cracking. "You will. Because this isn't something we can fix on stage, or with practice, or with one of your speeches about staying strong. This is something broken inside me, something I don't want you trying to carry." Jungkook stepped forward again. Close enough to feel the warmth radiating off Jimin's skin, close enough that one movement would erase the space between them. "I never asked you to carry anything alone," he said softly. Jimin's eyes flickered with surprise, then pain. "Then why didn't you ask earlier?" he asked. Jungkook inhaled sharply. He had no answer. He tiptoed around Jimin's distance, afraid of pushing him, afraid of chasing him away, never realizing that silence, too, could hurt. The storm outside intensified, rain slamming like angry fingers against the windows. The shadows in the hallway grew darker, deeper. Jimin turned away again, but slower this time. Not running. Not escaping. Just retreating. "I have to go," he murmured. Jungkook's hand instinctively reached out before stopping in midair. He lowered it, curling his fingers into a trembling fist. "Will you come back?" The question hung between them, fragile, dangerous. Jimin exhaled shakily. "I don't know." Something in Jungkook collapsed at those three words. Jimin walked toward the exit. Each step echoed like a countdown. Jungkook stood frozen in the corridor, heart pounding against his ribs, breath uneven, vision blurring at the edges. The cold draft from the doorway swept through his clothes, chilling him to the bone just as Jimin's hand touched the handle. Jungkook whispered again, this time almost inaudible, like a confession escaping on its own. I'm not ready to lose you. Jimin paused. His shoulders tensed. His fingers shook on the metal handle. For a moment, the world held its breath, then he pushed the door open, letting the roar of the storm swallow the hallway whole. He stepped out into the rain without looking back. Jungkook stayed behind, his heartbeat echoing in the empty corridor, realizing too late that the words he had spoken weren't enough and the ones he hadn't spoken might have changed everything. The rain hadn't stopped when Jungkook finally forced himself out of the hallway. His hoodie was already soaked by the time he reached the back entrance, the cold hitting him like a wall, but he didn't care. He scanned the parking lot through the blur of water and dim lights until he found Jimin standing alone beneath the awning, shoulders hunched, staring into the sheets of falling rain as if searching for answers hidden inside it. Hyung, Jungkook called out, his voice rough from the storm and the words he never got to say. Jimin didn't turn. You should be inside. You should be talking to me. A hollow laugh escaped Jimin. He shook his head, droplets splashing from his hair. Talking won't fix anything. Jungkook stepped under the awning, the rain instantly quieter around them. You don't know that. I do. Jimin finally faced him. The shadows under his eyes were dark, carved by weeks, maybe months, of silent battles. I don't want to drag you into this, Jungkook. You already did, Jungkook said, breath trembling. The moment you started pulling away. Jimin's jaw tightened. Don't twist this. I wasn't trying to hurt you. That doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Jimin looked away again, rubbing the back of his neck, one of his nervous habits, one Jungkook had memorized without even trying. You're too intense sometimes, he whispered. I can't think straight when you look at me like everything depends on it. Jungkook blinked, stunned by the honesty. Because it does. Jimin's hand froze mid-air. Slowly, cautiously, he lowered it, his breath stuttering. You shouldn't say things like that. But it's true. Jungkook stepped closer, close enough that their breaths mingled in the cold air. You mean more to me than you think. Jimin shook his head, but it wasn't rejection, it was fear, trembling at the edges. I'm not someone you should depend on, he said softly. I mess things up. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I can't sleep. I can't focus. I can't even look at you without feeling like I'm breaking something I can't fix. What are you talking about? Jungkook whispered. You don't break things, Hyung. You hold people together. Jimin laughed sharply, bitterly. Not myself. Jungkook reached for his wrist, gently, as if touching something fragile. Jimin didn't pull away. If you're hurting, Jungkook said, you don't get to hide it from me. Why not? Jimin's voice cracked. Why do you care so much? Because you're not just Hyung to me. The air stilled. Jimin's breath hitched. Don't say it. You already know. Jungkook, you already know, Jungkook repeated, firmer this time. Don't pretend you don't feel anything. You went silent because you felt too much, not too little. Jimin closed his eyes, and for a moment Jungkook saw everything he'd been hiding, longing, fear, guilt, desire, all tangled into something neither of them had words for. You can't do this, Jimin whispered, voice shaking. Not with everything going on. Not with the pressure. The expectations. The cameras. The fans. You think we can survive something like this? We've survived worse. Have we? Jimin opened his eyes, wet, bright, exhausted. You don't understand what they've been saying. Jungkook stiffened. Who? Jimin hesitated, then exhaled. Management. Staff. People who think they know everything about us. He swallowed hard. You've seen the rumors. The obsessive theories. The edits. The pages and pages dissecting every glance, every touch. I tried to ignore it, but it's getting worse. His voice lowered, pained. And I can't be the reason your life gets ripped apart. Jungkook's chest tightened. Hyung, I don't care about you should. Jimin stepped back, but Jungkook followed, gently pinning him with his presence, not touch. You should care, Jimin continued, voice trembling. Because people will twist this. They'll twist you. And I can't handle watching that happen. Jungkook's breath grew heavier. You're not protecting me. You're punishing yourself. Jimin's eyes watered, one tear slipping down before he could hide it. Jungkook reached up instinctively, brushing it away with the back of his fingers. Jimin inhaled sharply at the touch. You can't keep doing this, Jungkook murmured. Running every time you're scared. And you can't keep chasing me. Then stop running, Jungkook whispered. Jimin let out a breath that sounded like surrender and heartbreak woven together. If I stay, if I tell you everything, I don't know if I can go back to pretending nothing's changed. Then we don't pretend. You don't get it, Jimin said, almost pleading. Once this door opens, it doesn't close. Then leave it open. Jimin stared at him, eyes wide, lips parted, chest rising and falling too fast. The storm behind them roared, wind slicing through the dim lights, but neither of them moved. You make everything harder, Jimin whispered. You make everything worth it. For the first time all night, Jimin didn't look away, his voice was barely audible. I'm tired of hurting like this. Then let me stay, Jungkook said. Even if you're breaking. Even if you're confused. Even if you think you don't deserve it. I'm not letting you go alone. Jimin's throat bobbed as he swallowed. His fingers twitched, like he wanted to reach for Jungkook but didn't trust himself. Why now? Jimin asked. Why say all of this tonight? Jungkook breathed out, steady, vulnerable. Because you were walking away. And I realized I'd rather be drenched in a storm chasing you than dry somewhere else pretending I don't care. Jimin closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, something in him had cracked, softened, unguarded, painfully human. You're impossible, he whispered. So stay, Jungkook said again, quieter, but not weaker. Just for tonight. Don't leave me like this. Jimin didn't answer at first. He just looked at Jungkook, really looked at him, as if seeing every memory they shared piled into one trembling moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, fragile, and devastatingly honest. I don't know how to stay without breaking more. Jungkook stepped closer until their foreheads nearly touched, his voice barely a breath. Then break. I'll be here to pick up every piece. Jimin inhaled sharply, his breath catching against Jungkook's. The storm raged, the air between them charged and unsteady, their hearts beating too fast for either of them to pretend anymore. And for the first time since the night began, Jimin didn't pull away. The storm followed them all the way back inside, the wind slamming the back door shut behind them with a violent crack that echoed through the empty building. Jimin flinched at the sound, as if the world itself was warning him. Jungkook didn't touch him this time, he didn't have to. Their breaths were still tangled from the moment outside, their hearts beating too fast, too loud, too dangerously synchronized. Come sit, Jungkook said softly, guiding him toward the dim rehearsal room nearby. The lights were low, casting long shadows across the mirrors, and the faint smell of sweat, wood polish, and old music hung in the air like memories waiting to resurface. Jimin hesitated at the doorway. His fingers gripped the frame as if stepping inside meant crossing a point of no return. Jungkook, he murmured, eyes flickering with uncertainty. You're not alone, Jungkook whispered. Jimin exhaled shakily and stepped inside. The room felt smaller than usual, like the walls were leaning in to listen. Raindrops drummed against the windows, muted but constant. Jungkook shut the door gently behind them, the soft click sounding far too intimate. Jimin drifted toward the mirror. He stared at his reflection, shoulders sagging, eyes rimmed red, hair damp against his forehead. Look at me, he said hollowly. I look exhausted. You look like someone who's been carrying too much. Jungkook approached him slowly from behind, stopping close enough that Jimin could feel the warmth of his presence reflected in the glass. You don't have to hide anymore. That's exactly the problem, Jimin whispered. If I stop hiding, I don't know what I'll become. Jungkook held his gaze in the mirror. Someone honest. Honesty ruins things. It also saves them. Jimin let out a humorless laugh. You always think you can fix everything. No, Jungkook said, voice low. Just you. Jimin's breath hitched, and he turned sharply, facing him. Their chests nearly brushed. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because I'll believe you. Jungkook didn't blink. Then believe me. Silence thickened. The storm rumbled outside like distant applause, or warning. Jimin's fingers curled into his palms. His voice dropped, raw. You don't know half of what I've been fighting. Tell me. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Jimin's expression shifted: anger, hurt, fear, longing, all tangled together. You think all I've been dealing with is stress? Rumors? Management? It's not just that, Jungkook. He brushed a hand through his hair, pacing away before turning back around. It's me. I'm losing myself. Jungkook's eyes softened. Then let me help you find yourself again. You can't. Jimin's voice cracked. You make everything louder. Every emotion. Every breath. Every thought. When you're near me, I can't think, I can't breathe, I can't be calm. Jungkook stepped closer. Good. Jimin's eyes widened. How is that good? Because it means you feel something. Jimin swallowed, throat bobbing. Feeling doesn't mean it's right. Then why are you shaking? Jimin looked down, realizing his fingers were trembling. He hid them behind his back, but it was too late. Jungkook reached out slowly, giving him a chance to pull away. When Jimin didn't, Jungkook gently took his hand. Jimin inhaled sharply at the touch. Hyung, Jungkook murmured, stop pretending. You don't know what you're asking for. I'm asking for you. Jimin closed his eyes like the words physically hurt. If we cross this line, we already did, Jungkook whispered. Jimin's breath faltered. He opened his eyes again, and in them was a storm fiercer than anything outside. You're playing with fire, Jimin warned. Then burn with me, Jungkook said. Jimin's jaw tightened, not in anger but in surrender. This is dangerous. I'm not afraid of danger. You should be, Jimin whispered, stepping closer until they were almost chest to chest. Because once I stop holding myself back, I won't be able to undo it. Jungkook's voice dropped to a hush. Then stop. Jimin stared at him, eyes bright and haunted. His breath shook. His hands rose hesitantly, almost touching Jungkook's shoulders before he pulled back at the last second. I don't want to hurt you. You won't. You don't know that. Then let me decide what hurts. Jimin trembled. His control, the walls he'd built, the distance he'd tried to create, they were all cracking, piece by piece. You're pushing me, he said, voice thin, because you're worth pushing for. Jimin's breath stuttered, and something inside him snapped in the softest, most devastating way. He stepped forward, closing the remaining space between them, their foreheads brushing. Jungkook inhaled sharply at the contact. Jungkook, Jimin whispered, voice trembling with everything he'd held back for too long. Why did it have to be you? Because I'm the one who sees you, Jungkook murmured. Jimin's fingers finally touched Jungkook's hoodie, light, hesitant, desperate. His grip tightened, pulling him closer. His eyes shone with pain and longing, and for the first time that night, he didn't fight either feeling. Then don't look away, Jimin said softly. I never have, Jungkook replied. The storm outside roared. And inside that quiet room, with the lights dim and their breaths trembling against each other, neither of them stepped back. The air between them didn't settle after the kiss, it pulsed, charged with something too alive to ignore. Jungkook sat there, chest rising and falling too quickly, lips still tingling, eyes blown wide as if he just stepped off a cliff and survived only because Jimin had jumped with him. Jimin's hand was still on his jaw. He could feel the heat radiating from Jungkook's skin, the trembling beneath it, the storm barely held back. His thumb brushed a faint streak of tears that hadn't yet dried. Are you okay? Jimin whispered. Jungkook exhaled shakily, the breath catching halfway. No. Yes. I don't know. I feel like I can't breathe, but also like I'm finally breathing for the first time. Jimin let out a soft, trembling laugh, relief mixed with something deeper, heavier, but beneath the closeness, something darker flickered behind Jungkook's eyes. A shadow. A memory. A fear that hadn't dissolved with the kiss. Jimin saw it immediately. What are you thinking about? He asked gently. Jungkook hesitated, pressing his back into the couch as though trying to steady himself. Something you said earlier. Something I didn't understand. What part? You said you were pretending too. Jungkook's voice tightened. Pretending what, exactly? The question hung between them like a test, delicate, dangerous. Jimin forced himself to hold Jungkook's gaze even though every instinct screamed to look away. Pretending that the way I felt about you was normal. That it was just Hyungdong-sang stuff. That it didn't get complicated. Jungkook's breath hitched. Complicated how? Jimin swallowed hard. There were moments I couldn't explain. When you touched me, even casually, it felt different. When you smiled at me after a performance, it stayed with me longer than it should have. And when you were hurting and you wouldn't let me in, his voice broke. It devastated me. Jungkook's eyes softened, but they also darkened, shadowed with guilt he couldn't hide. I didn't want to shut you out, he whispered. I was scared that if I opened up, you'd leave. Jimin moved closer until their knees pressed again. I'm still here. I know, Jungkook said. And that scares me too. Jimin's breath stuttered. Why? Jungkook leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together tightly. His voice was quieter now, threaded with something raw. Because now you know what I feel. And it makes everything real in a way that could blow up in our faces. Jimin placed a hand on Jungkook's back, slow and gentle, feeling the tension coil beneath his skin. It won't blow up, Jimin murmured. Not if we're honest. Not if we do this together. Jungkook turned his head slightly, looking at Jimin through lashes still wet from crying. You really want to do this? With me? Even after what I wrote? Jimin leaned in, brushing his forehead against Jungkook's temple. Especially after what you wrote. Jungkook's breath shivered out of him, but suddenly, the door at the end of the hallway slammed. They both froze. Footsteps. Voices. Someone entering the dorm. Jungkook's entire body snapped tense. The panic in his eyes was instant, sharp, overwhelming. Hyung, Jimin grabbed his hand, squeezing. It's okay. It's not, Jungkook whispered harshly. If anyone sees us right now, we're just talking. No, Jungkook said, shaking his head. Not anymore. It's different. We're different. Jimin opened his mouth to reassure him, but Jungkook shot up from the couch so fast Jimin startled. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small space like a trapped animal. Jimin stood slowly. Breathe. Jungkook stopped abruptly. I can't. His chest heaved. I can't think straight. My head is, Hyung, it's too much. Jimin stepped toward him carefully, like approaching something fractured that might break if touched the wrong way. Talk to me. You don't understand, Jungkook insisted, voice low, frantic. What we just did, what we said, it changes everything. And I want it, God, I want it more than anything, but I also know what it means. He turned to Jimin with eyes full of fear. It means if something goes wrong, if one thing falls apart, we lose each other. Jimin felt the words like a knife, not because they were false, but because they were so painfully true. I don't want to lose you, Jungkook whispered. But I don't know how to do this without risking everything. Jimin stepped closer, placing a hand gently on Jungkook's cheek. Jungkook closed his eyes, exhaling shakily at the touch. You don't have to know how, Jimin said softly. We'll figure it out together. Jungkook leaned into the touch, forehead pressing against Jimin's shoulder, his voice muffled and breaking. I'm scared, Hyung. I know, Jimin whispered. But I'm scared too. And that's okay. Jungkook's grip tightened on Jimin's shirt as if grounding himself. The footsteps in the hallway grew closer. Jungkook stiffened again. We can't, he started, pulling back. Jimin grabbed his wrist. Then come with me. Jungkook blinked. What? Not to hide, Jimin said. Just, somewhere we can talk without you feeling like you're going to break apart. Jungkook hesitated, then nodded, almost too quickly. Jimin didn't waste another second. He intertwined their fingers briefly, grounding Jungkook, then let go before opening the balcony door. The rush of cold night air swept in, sharp and cleansing. They stepped outside. The city lights glowed beneath them, a quiet contrast to the storm raging inside Jungkook's chest. He stood at the railing, gripping it tightly, breathing in the cold air like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Jimin stood beside him, not touching, but close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth radiating from him. After a long moment, Jungkook finally spoke. Hyung, I need you to promise me something. Jimin turned to him fully. Anything. Jungkook's voice cracked as he looked out over the city. If this ever hurts you, if I ever become too much, tell me. Don't stay quiet to protect me. Jimin stepped behind him, hands sliding gently across Jungkook's arms until they rested over his, grounding him against the railing. You're not too much, Jimin whispered. You're just finally letting yourself be real. Jungkook's body trembled. And I can handle real. Jungkook closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief that came from being seen and not abandoned. Slowly, he turned around, facing Jimin again. He took a shaky breath. There's something else I didn't write in the letter, he said quietly. The part one couldn't bring myself to admit on paper. Jimin's chest tightened. What is it? Jungkook stepped closer, the city lights framing him in soft gold. His voice was barely a whisper. The real reason I was scared of what I felt, Jimin waited, breath held, is because it wasn't just wanting you, Hyung. Jungkook swallowed, eyes locked on Jimin's with trembling vulnerability. It was needing you. The storm outside was gone, but the storm inside them still churned as Jungkook and Jimin stood alone in the practice room that had witnessed everything, every confession, every tear, every bruise of emotion they'd dragged into the light. The city glowed beyond the tall windows, soft and blurred like a watercolor, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see how their story ended. Jimin's fingertips trembled lightly against the hem of his hoodie. So, this is it, he asked, voice soft, afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled after days of chaos. His eyes searched Jungkook's face as if trying to read a future written directly in his expression. Jungkook took a step closer. For once, he wasn't shaking, not from fear, not from anger, not from the pressure that had crushed him in earlier episodes. This time, the tremor in him was different. It was steadiness disguised as vulnerability, certainty wrapped in raw emotion. It doesn't have to be, he murmured. Not unless you want it to be. Jimin blinked fast, the sting of tears making everything shimmer. I'm so tired, Jungkook. Tired of fighting you. Tired of fighting myself. His voice broke. But when you said look at me, his breath hitched. I realized I never stopped wanting to. Jungkook exhaled shakily, relief washing over him so intensely his shoulders physically dropped. Then stop running, he said quietly. Don't run from me anymore. Don't run from what we are. I'm done pretending I don't care. I'm done acting like it doesn't rip me apart when you look away. Jimin laughed under his breath, a shaky, disbelieving sound. You're the one who pushes me away when you're scared. And you're the one who shuts down when you're hurt, Jungkook shot back, though there was no heat in his voice, only the ache of truth. We're a mess. But we're our mess. Jimin stepped forward until their foreheads almost touched. So what do we do now? Jungkook lifted a hand and cupped Jimin's jaw gently, as if holding something too precious to risk dropping. We stop destroying each other, he whispered. We stop hiding. We stop lying. Jimin closed his eyes, leaning into the touch like it was the first time he'd felt warmth in days. I don't want perfect, he said. I just want real. You have it, Jungkook answered instantly. You've always had it. Jimin smiled, small, soft, the kind that made Jungkook's chest tighten in a way that was almost painful. Then kiss me, he said, barely audible. If you still want to. Jungkook didn't hesitate. His lips met Jimin's with the gentlest certainty, not like a desperate grasp for something slipping away, but like a promise finally spoken aloud. The kiss was slow, grounding, their breaths mixing as if they'd both been drowning and had finally surfaced. When they pulled back, Jimin rested his head against Jungkook's shoulder. Do you think people will understand? He asked quietly. Maybe, Jungkook said. Maybe not. But I'm not living for the world anymore. I'm living for the people who actually look back at me when I say look at me. Jimin snorted softly. You and your dramatic lines. Jungkook brushed a thumb over Jimin's cheek. You love them. Jimin didn't deny it. Instead, he wrapped his arms around Jungkook's waist, grounding both of them in the present. As long as you don't give up halfway again. I won't, Jungkook said. Not this time. The practice room lights dimmed automatically, as if signaling the end of their longest, hardest chapter. They stood there in the quiet glow, two silhouettes finally aligned, finally choosing each other without hesitation or fear. Jungkook pressed a light kiss to Jimin's hair. Let's go home. Jimin nodded. Yeah. Together. And for the first time in their story, Together didn't feel like a fragile hope. It felt like the truth.